Good morning, everyone. This is capital improvements, Monday, December 12th. It's 9:30 a.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We are in person at the City Hall meeting room, rooms 203, and also on Zoom. These meetings are held annually in accordance with the Greenfield City Charter, Section 5.5. The meetings are not hearings, but working sessions, and there will be no public comment. I will do a quick roll call and call to order. Member Wall.
Here.
Member Forgy.
Here.
And Member Prietti, I am also here, so we are called to order at 9:31 a.m. It's hard to believe after getting my two children to school this morning and shoveling everything that I managed to get here for 9:30. I'll just say that. So I'm as prepared as you would expect. I am.
Kudos.
I think it's the right call. We didn't need a delay this morning, but I did have to really boogie to get everyone out the door. Okay. I do not believe we have any additional capital requests. I believe we've heard from every department. No one seems to be ready to correct me, so I'm going to assume that's correct. We had, I don't recall we had any specific follow-up that we were going to do with departments. And again, I don't hear anyone jumping in to correct me. So I think that that is correct. Oh, I did have one thing. And it was from a question from the public, actually from Councilor DeSorger, about the bocce courts. Did you email that to me? Is that right? Yes. And I'm saying that because she's here in the room with us. For those who are, it looks like it's just Councilor Bottomley who's on the line. And there was a question about accessibility for mobility issues, accessibility for wheelchairs. And I did follow up with Director Moore about whether or not there'd been any changes to the plans since they were introduced with wheelchair access, and there have been no changes to the plans. So it does appear that it will still have the mobility access that was built in that's specific to the bocce courts. And I don't recall that I did follow up with anyone else. Does anyone have any follow-up they did that they want to share? Okay, so we will move on to discussion and voting. And I think we should, I'm wondering actually, Liz, if you have a recommendation on how to proceed. Otherwise, I will kind of proceed with this pretty striped spreadsheet has.
That's basically what we do. Amy,
Okay.
is just go right down the list and take a vote.
Okay. So, and let's do a quick reminder of what the little codes mean to, mostly for me, because I'm pretty new to all of this. And so GF is general fund. I'm looking across.
If you look at the very front, there's a.
Is there
It might be actually in the back of your,
F
right here.
right there.
There's a
at the
summary,
end?
right,
Okay.
And it tells you how much is in each.
right. And that's what those
General fund,
fund.
GSET, water, sewer.
B is bonds.
Okay.
C is capital stabilization. G is grants.
So everybody knows but me. All right.
Well,
You know, if you're new, that's the one, just ask. You
Yeah,
know,
okay.
that's the one that.
Okay, so let's start with fire and we'll see how we do with this. So we've got 3 FY24 specific requests: ambulance 2, the UTV replacement, and the rescue equipment replacement, which we have details on and includes the airbags and the jaws of life. And that is a total of 564,000. And remind me how we tell if we're borrowing. It's the B.
Correct.
And C is the capital fund.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
I'd just like to mention one other thing is that the mayor actually ultimately decides on the funding source.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. No, just
Yes, no, thank you.
And she ultimately decides on all of these things too. I mean, we're just another opinion being thrown into the mix.
That's how I would describe it as
Your
well.
recommendations.
Yes, yes. Okay. Discussion on these three items.
I wondered why, since everybody is doing their budgets at the same time, which is why we had to meet this early in the year, why the rescue equipment replacement can't be worked into the budget for the fire department. To me, that's like buying computers for the schools. It's an expense of the department that does not last for 30 years. I'm sorry, Liz, were you going to
I know, I
start?
was like, I shouldn't butt in, but I am, sorry. I think it was a dollar threshold as well as, I think it's 20 years. I thought that that's, or 25, the threshold. We try to keep one-time expenses out. And I mean, what did the chief, I'm sorry, I wasn't there for the Chiefs. What was his presentation on how long and how often he has to replace
Oh,
them?
that's a really good question.
He just said he couldn't afford them in the budget is my remembrance.
Okay,
But
I don't recall that there were some things he gave us kind of recommended lifespans for. I don't recall with the rescue equipment, if we talked about what the lifespan is of what they have currently.
I mean, ropes and harnesses and extraction tools, those are all things that, like
Yeah, I
computers
agree.
for the schools.
I agree with you. I don't know what a Jaws of Life and what the makeup is.
Me either, but my guess would be they don't hit the $20,000
Okay,
cost point.
it's true.
They do describe it as end of life.
A camera, an SCBA, rope harnesses, and gas.
And you're right, Jean, what it does say in the justification, these are small items, however, when added collectively, the department's budget cannot support the purchase of these items.
So I agree with Jean.
Thank you. Okay.
I also have to say that I agree with Jean too. And that would be my recommendation to the mayor is to fund it through the budget. I also want to note that the first Jaws of Life that this department had going back like 20, 25 years, they had to do fundraising to get their first Jaws of Life. So we've come a very long way in basically recognizing the needs of the fire service. But I think this could go into appropriation.
Thank you. And then the other two items, was there further discussion on that stuff? Okay. And then the ambulance and the UTV. Oh, I guess there was follow-up about that because there was some certainty that the recreation department has a UTV. And when I talked to Director Moore about the bocce court question, I did ask her if they have a UTV and they do not. So just to add to they do not have one of those. There was additional commentary, but I'll leave that out.
Especially since you're being recorded.
Yes.
The police department does have one.
Yes.
And so I'm kind of, I guess part of me wants to say that it's important that equipment be shared from all the departments like DPW, police and fire, whenever there's an emergency. I realize the request and I realize that it's a valid request, but I'm not really sure that this is the appropriate time to fund this.
I totally agree.
Thank you.
I mean, it's not something you use every day. If it were,
Yeah, they do use it during mostly rescue and off-road operations, right?
right.
Yes.
Because I think there was a question about the number of
Right.
trail miles.
And how
Yeah.
many,
Yeah.
rest.
And also, and also it's, I'm not the expert, okay? But when there's an all hands on deck emergency, then all the resources are mobilized. So it's just not like this resource, it belongs to the police department or the fire department. The resource belongs to the city. And everything is mobilized in that particular case. And I realize that there are different functions for different departments, but having been through, emergencies like flood emergencies and everything else personally, it is a whole, an all hands on deck response. So again, I'm kind of looking to maybe push this out. That's just my feeling right now.
Thank you. And this is kind of a tangent, but one of the questions I had after going through this process this year is, would the way we purchase and share these things change if we had an Office of Public Safety rather than, two separate, you're nodding your head, Mayor Forte, or Councilor Forte, and I'm kind of looking at you for some guidance around that. Is that something we've discussed in the past? Has it come up in that way?
Well, I think that I was never involved in a discussion for public safety, building department or whatever, the umbrella piece. But I can say that the history of our police, fire, and emergency services is one of mutual response. So when the public safety complex was being talked about and everything else, everything would be centrally located and all those assets would be available for any one of those services to choose what they needed at the time. The sad part is that we never made it as far as the public, the public safety building. However, there is, in my opinion, again, mutual aid response that goes beyond our community. Although Greenfield being the biggest community oftentimes gets called upon for its equipment and its manpower to help the smaller towns. Yeah, I mean, I agree with your assessment, Amy. I think it's a very valid point that there would be a lot more crossover of equipment use and everything else had this come into fruition.
Okay, so again, thank you for that. And it was a tangent, but I think it was something that might be worth, pushing forward a little bit. It just, it seems some of the requests seem like almost territorial, and that doesn't feel good in terms of decision making for sure. Yeah.
Okay, Amy.
Yeah.
Message me.
Well, I have other examples we can talk about later. So, we've got then the ambulance. Any discussion on what is the most sizable by a long shot request here? Oh, and I would also note just one last thing on the UTV is that interesting on the justification or the information given by the fire department is that this was a gift. The one they're trying to replace was a gift to the department. So yeah, we do. I think there's some question about the sustainability of our capital requests around these things because gifts are great, but yeah, it's like okay, that's another tangent. The ambulance. So $500,000 for an ambulance, and this would be ambulance 2.
Yes.
And it would be replacing a vehicle that is over, let's see, 13 years old. 3 to 5 years is recommended, 5 to 10 years as a backup.
It's purchased used originally.
Yeah,
This is a bit of a conundrum because this is ambulance too. However, we did hear that the chief intended to, run both vehicles, both ambulances, like in a rotation so that nobody gets more wear. One vehicle doesn't get any more wear and tear than the other vehicle. It's costly. However, we've started down this path of having both ambulances. And again, I'm trying to weigh all these things out and everything else. We do have a new fire station coming on board and everything else. I am leaning in favor of going ahead with this borrowing. I wonder, however, and maybe this is something that Liz can help answer. I know that we funded and we purchased the new ambulance that we have right now, and I wonder how much of the what is the situation with the revolving fund in regard to the ambulance service, and is there monies that can offset this request?
The chief could really speak best to it, but what I can tell you is they have already one coming from there, the last one. And his overtime has been so significant that it has pretty much dwindling down it's tight. So I'm sure that that's what he's thinking. And I'm recalling from last year, I believe he wanted to take on more of the calls for traffic accidents. So that would generate also the additional revenue with having the ambulances on available, I guess.
Okay.
are you saying that overtime gets paid out of the revolving account? So it depletes?
No, the first one did. There's a possibility that you could, but right now it's not there. It doesn't mean that you couldn't, if down the road, the ambulance funds were significant again, enough, we could vote to pay the debt service or transfer the funds for the debt service. It should be, to the general fund.
I see.
But it's not there now. And I think the goal all along was really to make that self-sufficient as possible. It's just been a rough years with overtime and people being out, and not having the staff to, and they have a oh, Chris, what is it, 5-man minimum coverage?
Yeah.
It
5-man,
incurs a lot of overtime.
Mhm.
So
There is, we also have ambulance receipts, and we could take a look at ambulance receipts too. I don't know what generally you write a portion of those off. You have a policy about that, but.
Oh, okay,
We can also look at in terms of.
okay, thank you.
that.
Well, does the fact that it won't be ready for a couple of years sway our opinion on how to proceed with this? I mean, the borrowing will not be immediately.
no, it would, vehicles are so
Taking a couple years.
far out. Yeah. And again, if it's there, yes, we can do that, but in order to get it ordered, there's got to have to be appropriation in place.
But if there's money in the ambulance fund in a couple of years, we wouldn't have to borrow for it, right? We would.
We could
correct.
pay the debt service payments.
Or
I
we,
think you're
or
saying.
we could look at possibly, I don't know if it's possible to lease that one too, but just to make it more doable through the revolving fund. Then,
So basically, when we approve or not, these are recommendations go out to council and the authority would be there, but the borrowing would not happen right away as in other projects.
absolutely, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And,
And
and
I'm sorry if I think the chief also could weigh in on this and I missed that. I'm sorry, I've been really sick for a couple
Oh,
days.
no,
No, it's
okay,
fine.
me
It's
too,
fine.
me too.
It's fine.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
Everybody.
well, when would the lease versus buy decision be made?
Probably not until getting the specs around and getting to order it. So my guess, is a year or so.
So FY 25.
Yeah.
So
And again,
if we,
I wish the chief was here because one of the things that also complicated the ambulance revolving fund was that he is paying an additional, because of that minimum 5 staffing, he needed another person to cut down on the overtime, and that position is being funded out of the revolving fund. So that's why I said between that
Yeah.
overtime and existing lease, it's pretty tight.
Got it. Okay.
so if
But
excuse
sorry,
me.
Jean. Yeah, go ahead.
So if theoretically we said we support the ambulance, it has so many layers to go through before the decision is made, that it's really not on us.
It isn't on you, really.
Right.
But
Once you
no,
say
the
yes.
question, I think the question is, do you agree with the chief on bringing in more revenue? And this is necessary to bringing in more revenue.
Right. And then there's a lot more to be determined where and the funding and all that. it
Yes,
seems.
yeah. Okay. Very helpful discussion. I think, wondering if we should try a motion. I would entertain a motion at this point to approve the borrowing amount of 470,000 for ambulance 2 for the fire department. And leave it at that as the motion.
I'll
So
second
moved.
it.
Okay, I've got a member Wall, or I'm sorry, member 4G, and then member Wall with the second. And do we want further discussion on that?
Nope.
I'm not hearing any, and we'll do a roll call vote. Chris,
Yes,
Jean,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes, so that one passes unanimously. Look at me all ready to write stuff down. I'm so bad at writing things.
Me too. We're all writing them down. We got you.
And should we, I think we probably should be thorough and do a motion on the other 2 as well. I think even though we've kind of talked them out already, how about any motion to approve the UTV purchase for the fire department of 46,000? I'm not hearing one. And any motion to approve the purchase of rescue equipment?
I'd like to make a motion for the record that a recommendation be made to the mayor that the $48,000 request to replace end-of-life rescue equipment be made, that we make this motion, and we strongly urge the mayor to take this out of funds so that it goes into the budgetary. So however that happens,
Okay.
I would say take it out of free cash or whatever it is.
Sure.
when they're doing their budget, the instruction needs to be to the fire department, we will fund $48,000 out of appropriation. That's a long-winded motion, but
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a way to shorten it. So a
I make a
motion,
motion to strongly recommend to the mayor that the equipment request, let's see, be put into the budgetary appropriations.
great.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, and we'll do a vote, Chris
Yes.
and Jean,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes. And great, let me just make a note there. Okay. And look at that, we got the first section done. Okay.
Can I just ask a
Please.
question?
Yes.
So if you are, for the UTV, there was no vote, are you going to make a recommendation to move it to a future year, or does it just slide to the future year?
I would look to Jean to tell us what has happened in previous years with that. I'm not recalling how we handled any of it last year.
Well, I would say that since we discussed the fact that they could share with the police department, that at this point, we wouldn't move it. But he can come back next year and ask for it again.
My recollection was with this committee last year that we just kind of let it sit. And if we didn't do anything with it, it just sat there, and that spoke enough.
Okay.
Because the reality of our work is that it's just one voice in the whole thing. And we're kind of like over here when the rest of it's really
Sure,
happening.
just in
over
part
here.
of the plan, I
Yeah.
figured, you're making recommendations on the plan, so that I was just thinking if, there was gonna be an item moved to FY '25, if you would, but I see what you're saying.
I think they would
gonna
just-
let it.
my
it has to be
experience-
Requested.
Yeah, it just in my brief experience over 2 years is that they come back.
Perfect, okay, got it.
They keep coming
Crystal
back.
clear, thank you. Okay.
Sometimes they come back.
Okay, so next up, we got thank you for the question. I'm really new to all of this stuff, so it's not going to bother me if anybody asks a question. And I work in college financial aid, and nobody ever knows what's going on in financial aid, so it's totally fine. Okay, so community development, the ADA improvements at City Hall, we had a great presentation from Christian and MJ. Diana, unfortunately, right before you started with us, and it involves the big highlight was the bathrooms, right? But really, this is just ordering a study, our standard $25,000 for a study for this or a study for that. Any discussion on this one,
I have discussion.
I
please?
do too. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead,
I
Jean.
have a problem with the $5,000 being included that they're charging for overseeing the construction. Because there is no construction in the proposal. I have a problem with the fact that this proposal has a structural review, which for 2 bathrooms and for a bath, the main level bathrooms and the humps in the floor. I don't see that needs structural review. And it appears to me that $29,000 could fix the bathrooms and the humps in the floor versus going out for borrowing or whatever we're doing with this. I'm looking now to see. I just have a problem with this whole thing as structured.
Chris, it sounded like you wanted to chime in as well.
Yeah, I do. So just for the record and clarification and everything else, the information was provided to us on House Bill number 4807, which is in the packet, and you'll see in the paperwork that the state has done a wonderful thing in recognizing the fact that our infrastructure for municipal buildings is in significant need of repair. But if you go to the page where it says 2 of 18, and you go down to 55 at the bottom of the page, then you will see that as you read through all of this, all of these towns have been evaluated. And this is what I think Jean is referring to when she says that not less than $500,000 shall be expended for efficiency and accessibility of improvements to Greenfield City Hall.
So it's like the library all over again.
It's a grant of some kind.
It's like a door opener to me. And so I have significant concerns. We did hear a very good presentation. And yeah, I've lived in that building, so I understand. And there's no doubt in my mind that we need to do something to mitigate this. But at this point, I don't have a clear picture of what the game plan going forward is on this. Is this a one and done? Or is, like Jean points out, are we getting into structural stuff at this point? Are we triggering? That's kind of where I'm at this point. And also, while I'm on my soapbox, I want to put a plug in for the employee bathrooms. Now, I realize that these are public access bathrooms, but according to ADA compliance issues, that I don't think it much matters whether they're public or private. I think they all need to be into ADA compliance mode. And it kind of disturbed me when I went into that bathroom, the ladies' room on the second floor. Well, it is disturbing anyway, but there hasn't been any thought to ADA compliance. So I think it should be, in my opinion, it should be a dual project. That's number one. But again, I would need to know much more about this House bill and what the long-range game plan is.
Because if you spend $500,000, you've got to bring the whole city hall up to code compliance on everything.
Absolutely.
And that is millions of dollars, not $29,000.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Agreed.
But I do think the bathrooms need to be fixed. I mean, I think that is a tragedy, the way these bathrooms are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Liz, so is this a state earmark, Liz, for the 500,000 that the city has? Is that what we're looking at here?
I believe, I wasn't there for MJ's, but I believe that it's, yeah.
Looks like a state earmark, a legislative earmark.
And the other thing I would just mention is that MJ's department is in charge of ADA for the city. So I was thinking about the bocce court request, that maybe that should be going through MJ's office.
Yeah, so it's a state earmark, basically.
Yeah.
And we don't know that we need that much, and we also don't know that that much would be enough.
I'm curious, I'm curious what was submitted to get the 500,000. Like we must have submitted some request, and I'm not sure what it covered, but.
I don't think so. I think that the House has gone ahead and done this.
Just done it.
Basically, I think there are certain criteria at play. If you just look at some of these particular things that are being talked about in this report, well, I don't know, maybe that's correct, Diana. I don't know. I'm just looking at, like, the Health and Wellness Center provided that not less than $500,000 shall be expended for the town of Medfield.
Right.
for the complete re-engineering, redesign, and replacement of North Street, including building, blah, blah, blah. And not less than.
We
$1
were
million
solicited for these, like from the
shall be
legislature.
expected from the city of Revere for the reconstruction of the historic.
Seawall,
Obviously,
yeah.
there are requests. I mean, they're specific to individual cities and towns. So there must have been some representative requests made on behalf of cities and towns.
Yeah.
So we can get that. I think we should get that information.
And if you go to the previous, on page 1 of 34, on the, it has $100 million that's available for the bathrooms. I mean, to just do the studies to get the bathrooms. So I don't object to having a study, but $29,000 for a study to fix just the first floor bathrooms and the humps sounds a bit unreasonable to me. But I would like to have a way to fix the bathrooms. I just don't know. Since that's not what was submitted, I don't know that we have any say-so over that.
Gina, are you saying that you think what is outlined in the second section on that first page, that $100 million?
Yeah.
That's the total amount available. That's the legislative.
Okay.
So basically the legislation had a certain
it.
amount of money. They put 50 million toward design and construction for cultural. They did 100 million
I
for
see.
ADA and energy.
I
So
see. Okay.
we
you.
got 500,000 toward our project, which is for an efficiency and accessibility improvements to Greenfield City Hall.
Yeah.
But it says,
That's what we can
but
spend.
it says, but not less than 500,000.
Right, so we have up to 500,000, not less than 500,000. So.
Does that mean we have to take the whole 500,000?
Well, that's what we need to understand when they gave.
I would,
Go ahead.
I would think that the reason for the study is you have to show them something. So
Right.
that will
Yeah.
determine
Right. Right.
how much.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just an earmark. So basically, once you have the documentation, then you usually submit that and then they release, basically we don't have the money. It's an earmark. But it sounds like we were trying to get in line to be able to access it.
Well, if actually what I think it is, the $500,000, I think you're correct. I think it's an earmark, but I also am I think, Amy, you said this at the beginning of this discussion. It's the library all over again.
Well, these
Because
state incentives are so strange.
Yeah,
it's going to trigger. That's what I think
That's a good word.
yeah.
it's going to trigger a redo. And then, again, we're going to be looking at another building. And so I think, and I've seen this in the past, I think we need to be careful because when we accept one thing, it can also snowball into many other things. And this needs to be vetted. I think I'm going to turn this down, not because the bathrooms need, the need is not there. I'm going to turn it down because I'm concerned about what it's going to commit Greenfield to in the future. And the request is, again, small enough that maybe an appropriation would be instead of a borrowing.
Oh, it's not a borrowing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't read that part.
It's from capital.
Okay.
Well, and then there's Jean's point too of asking for the 25,000 when really the services that are actually needed are just over 19,000. If I'm reading it correctly, because of the construction piece.
And it's confusing because in the narrative, it says they're not doing any construction administration. So I'm a little
Well, it
confused.
does say in there that That's what they would charge to do the construction.
Oh, I see, okay. But it does not, just the cost is for design work only, okay.
I'm inclined to say no, that this is not well thought out.
Do you want to make a motion to that effect, Jean?
I make a motion that we not approve this because it has not been well thought out.
I will second.
Okay, further discussion?
So can I, might
Please.
I say something?
Of course,
So I
anytime you'd
just-
like, you can
Okay,
say something.
please, so thank you. So I completely appreciate that, and I just want, I've been doing this for a long time in the municipal world, so when the state, wants to give you $500,000 to do something, it's hard for me to, sort of want to say no to that. So I do appreciate that, but I would say, if there is any way we could try to get a little bit more information on what the parameters are and, what those responsibilities are to the earmark before we just say no to the $500,000, because perhaps it is something that we could, I appreciate Councilor Forgy's point about it requiring the town or the city to do more with the building, and that very well may be the case. But I think just again, before we just say no, getting these earmarks is, not easy. So it's not a slam dunk, but somebody did go through the effort to put this information in and try to get this money. And the fact that we've been put on the list is something. So, that's just my take. Liz, I mean.
Do we know who got us to this point in terms of being in the legislation?
MJ, I'm thinking
Yes,
somehow.
correct.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so again, there must have been some significant discussion and she had some discussion with with some legislators, and they said, yes, we're gonna give you $500,000 for the city hall to investigate.
So I would say, since the mayor is actually the ultimate on whether these go forward or not,
Yeah,
that capital committee can say no, but would like to see more information
Yep.
presented.
Right, similar to what
Yeah.
we've done with part of the fire request. And I'm making notes, and we can do a follow-up to the mayor regarding our discussion and our decisions. That's no problem.
excellent, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on this one? All right, so we are voting on a motion to not approve this request as it has not been well thought out,
Presented, not.
not well presented. Sorry.
And I
More
may have said that well.
More information needed.
More information needed, yes. Okay, we're ready to vote then. Chris?
I'm sorry. We've got a
Yes.
motion on the table, so not to recommend, so I vote yes.
Correct, yes. I believe that's what your intent, yes. And it's Jean?
Yes.
And I am also a yes on that. So that is unanimous. And I do appreciate the perspective from everyone because I was a little confused about the legislation piece, so that's really helpful. Okay, we are going to move on to the Portland Loo. And this is from the health department in combination with the DPW because of the coordination of actually doing the work, but it would come out of health department for capital, and this would be a capital request. And this is the second Portland Loo. This is one from FY24, and there was a similar amount approved in FY23 for the first one that's not yet installed. Is that correct? Yes, everyone's nodding their head. Okay. Discussion on this one.
It's a no-brainer.
I think I know what you're going to say, but say it.
Oh, it's a no-brainer. We need it. The public has asked for it. And, let's get going on it. So I will be voting yes on this.
Okay.
My perspective on this was, why don't we put in the one we voted for last year out of ARPA funds and see if it works before we spend the money on a second one?
I was really concerned when we had the discussion that there was no knowledge of what the status was of the first one from last year. There was no plan to put it in, and no one seemed to know that it had been approved that was sitting at the table that day. And that just, to me, it seems funny to approve a second one when we've got the money approved for the FY23 one and nothing happened. And there was also discussion, I recall, of not knowing where we would put a second one. Is that, am I, like the first one would go skate park kind of, Wilson's kind of area, and the second one, they didn't know. Chris or Liz, any perspective on what the heck happened?
I just imagine it was poor communication from two offices, honestly. But so,
Okay.
you know what? Maybe your suggestion is to move that to next year. I don't know, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, the
Yeah,
first-
please,
the
Chris.
first- Okay, thank you. The first one, the first Lou was promised through ARPA funds. So those are under the discretion of the mayor, and the mayor did make a commitment, and I agree with Liz. It was probably a communication piece. I am still in favor of voting a second one. I understand people are saying, you know, the idea is you're going to buy an electric car and you want to have your electric car before you buy your second electric car to see how it works, kind of a deal. I get that. I get that. But I just think that these have already been proven in other cities to be advantageous, and we are talking about public health. So I will stand with my yes vote on this one. This will come from a different funding source, and also hopefully when excuse me, when they're ordering one, they can order two.
Sure.
Thank you. Further discussion, or I would take a motion. Chris, you want to make a motion?
Sure, I will make a motion. I will make a motion that we accept the recommendation for $181,000 for what will be known as the second Portland Loop.
Portland Lou 2.
Loop two.
I love that.
Under further discussion, is there a way to make sure that this is the second one, not the first one?
Oh,
I mean, I want to make sure we're getting two for,
yeah. Well, or what I thought you meant was make sure the first one comes out of ARPA funds.
I want two.
You want to?
That's
Okay.
what I'm making sure is that we get two.
Two for.
Okay. Well, and I guess I would add discussion that there's no question that this is a critical investment for the city, whether it's one or two of them, and there's a need for two, certainly. I think it's an investment in helping the less advantaged folks in our community, certainly. It's also a convenience for families, for sure, to have it available, because kids.
And old people.
And old people. Yeah, I mean, I see the value for sure. I will freely admit, I was just a little bit taken aback that nothing had happened with the money from last year, and that just did not sit well for me. And I am overcoming that to say that I will vote in favor of the second one. And I do hear the concern from Jean about making sure ARPA funds for the first one and the second one, that's your ultimate concern, right? Okay. Okay, further discussion? Yeah, please,
Yes,
Chris.
if I could. Well, there are counselors that do remember that going through the Capitol with the first Lou, the commitment was made by the mayor, and it's in the minutes and the notes and everything else that it would come from ARPA funds. And the mayor has since publicly spoken and made that commitment again. In this meeting, she said she would look into it. She came back and said, yes, it was a commitment that I made. And so I feel comfortable when you make a public statement like that, that you have to follow through and you have to be good to your word. So I feel very comfortable voting this one at this point, knowing that the other one is going to come out of ARPA. That is our expectation, and that would be the follow through. So I'm
Excellent.
voting yes. I'm still voting yes.
Okay. Further discussion?
I vote yes.
Okay. So it sounds like we are ready to vote. Chris, just confirm. Yes. And Jean?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. Great, thank you. And we can move on to the police. So this is 1.2 million in borrowing. One piece is about $1 million, little less for the updates and reconfiguration of the police station that we've talked about now many times for about almost 3 years. And then the other piece is about $250,000 in vehicles. And I will open up for discussion. Don't all start at
dear.
once.
Oh dear. Let's just go, oh dear, first. Let me grab this paperwork here.
Well, I see that they had $904,000 last year that they got toward construction of improvements to the police station. And now he's asking for an additional $952,000. And I'm opposed to he has not spent the money from the first construction. So if he needs more money, I think he needs to come back in the future after he's spent the first money with better plans, et cetera, and what it's going toward.
I'm sorry, Jean, I didn't hear your dollar figure at the beginning of your statement.
It's in our book that last time we authorized $904,000 toward the construction of the fire station. And now he's asking for an additional $952,000.
Right.
And nothing has been spent out of the original request,
I don't know. He said they're working on dispatch, but that's all we know.
Okay.
So, yeah, from what I recall, he had said that they were getting the quotes. It was really hard to get contractors. And so that he had anticipated the quotes at any time and that it would take place. Pending, the amount of the quotes. So I think in his mind, it's very shortly to be spent. That's the best I can say to that.
The money from last year will, you think, very shortly be spent?
Yes, because he had said that it was very difficult to get hold of contractors to come and do this, even do the quotes.
So here's my question, and I've had this question from the beginning with the police station improvements. When we do improvements to school buildings, the superintendent is not so actively involved in getting quotes and things like that. Why is the chief of police charged with getting quotes and contractors?
He could delegate to some of his subordinates.
Wouldn't it be more like a DPW thing?
Not necessarily. You want the input of each department with the details of what they deal with on a daily basis.
Okay.
Plus, we don't have the city facilities manager, so we don't have, each department head is like, in a sense, the facilities manager, I would say.
So in the schools, perhaps we're relying on Eric, our facilities guy,
Correct.
to do more of that stuff. I see. Okay. So it's not unusual that the chief of police is going out and trying to get contractors. I found that to be very
Because
odd.
ultimately, he'll work with procurement and he'll have to develop very specific specs.
Mhm.
He's just trying to get the costs, right? Exactly.
Right, right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we will check, I'm making some notes. So I'll check with Laura on some of these,
Okay.
why we're not moving ahead with these,
Yeah.
purchasing.
And he did mention something about dispatch. And Chris, I do see your hand. That they are actively working on reconstructing or renovating that dispatch area on the first floor.
But he still has to get quotes and, I mean, he's got to go out and he has not done anything, in my opinion, of what he said, other than he's talked to contractors who won't come look.
To redo the dispatch, they're talking about moving a wall, so it's not just redo it.
Sure, sure.
So he does need a contractor because
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Chris, go
So,
ahead.
Okay, so last year at council, we wrestled with this quite a lot. And the money that was allocated at that particular time was, there were three categories: highest, secondary, and tertiary categories. So from the highest priorities, what was agreed upon, I believe, if you go back into council notes, is that we wanted to address the water infiltration, which was $105,000. The dispatch room, which was $185,000, and the locker room improvements, which was $575,000. I know there was probably something else there, because that total comes out to 865, but it was 904 that ended up being allocated by council. So I'm sure there's something else. So I just want to say that the council can only vote the money. They don't have the authority to say where the money should go. However, when you're requesting a large project like this and you've identified where your highest priorities are, I'm looking at the first and foremost a piece of importance, which is the water infiltration. That kind of, for me, is, the number one priority is to make that building stable and livable for the staff that are in there. And to the best of my knowledge, that hasn't been done. And I think that there was something in the original report, which the council has, but I don't think we have. I think we have a brief summary of it this year. I'm just looking through my paperwork here. So, we're a board that makes recommendations. So, however, I guess I want to get back to my original point, was that once you vote the money for the project, then the department head can identify what pieces of the project they want to go first, or they can take the whole amount of money and put it into, I'm not suggesting that this is the case, but they could put it into, just one part of the project. Just looking quickly down here, like reconfiguring the parking, or something, that kind of thing. I guess what I do agree that the money that was allocated, the authorizations that were allocated last year, nothing's happened on them. And I know that the authorizations can only stay in place so long before they have to be withdrawn. there's a time frame against that. Is that correct, Liz or Diana?
It's like 10 years.
Okay, okay.
It's once
Thank
you
you.
start spending it, then the
It's-
clock starts ticking.
Starts ticking.
Oh, I see.
Okay, okay. I'm not saying that there haven't been issues in the past year. I get that part as well.
Other discussion?
Yeah, no,
I
I guess
would
I'm
just
done. I
mention-
guess I'm,
You can keep going, Chris. I don't mind.
no, it's
I
okay.
remember Jean specifically asking the question about the water when the police chief was there, and he was, and at where it was, he was prioritizing dispatch because where the water infiltration was not on the same side or something to that effect, as the dispatch.
Yeah.
So I
remember
I don't think there's been zero action. Has it been completed and somebody signed? No. But according to the chief, he said it was difficulty in getting contractors. That's what I recall from the discussion.
Thank you.
Also, I just want to, from a council point of view, I just wanted to say that the real issue with council last year, among other things and everything else, was the Sally Port. That's the white elephant in the room, and that's
Yeah.
really where I see this going. I mean, this
Yeah.
is just my opinion. I think it's going to go the same way this year as well.
Well, Chris, I do think that if he came back with the plans like the fire station has for that building that's outside the fire station, if he came with, and that is not $1 million building, as his Sally Port would be. I mean, I think if he came with with better information on what a Sally Port would cost, that there would not be the opposition to it that there is now to $1 million Sally Port that's not heated.
Right, it's not even fully enclosed. Isn't
Right.
that what a Sally Port is? It's like they're gonna wash the vehicles in there.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
I'm not even gonna say it out loud, people. You can infer from my tone what I think about
Well,
that.
also, for full disclosure, it is where prisoner transfers take place as
Yeah,
well.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I mean, nobody is arguing that the Sally Port is not necessary. The argument is that it should not be $1 million Sally Port.
Right, I understand that. So the
Okay.
question is, what do we recommend? Do we recommend a lesser amount? Do we recommend yes, no, whatever? I mean, that would be my question is, where are we going with this particular request?
Plus, I just heard Counselor Forgy say, wasn't the locker rooms last year?
Yes.
But yes, it says they're in this year as well.
so
There's more of it. Okay.
I'm saying that was the recommendation that the council came up with.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
Yes,
But he can do whatever he wants to.
Gotcha. Okay.
Correct.
yeah.
But that included the locker rooms, the water filtration, the dispatch room. I
The
got it.
904 included the water, the dispatch, and the locker room, and there was another piece of that too.
So what the chief said at his meeting was that he would do the locker rooms if there was enough money left over, but he was starting to believe that wasn't gonna, or it wouldn't be quite enough, after he had done the water and the dispatch. That's what I recall from the meeting.
Yeah.
You're right. That is what he said.
Thank you.
And so even the justification doesn't quite make sense because they had how much approved last year for this?
900.
and now they're asking for almost the same amount or more again. And there's overlap in what things they're saying were covered last year and covered in the request this year.
And again, as he's going through those three things, he doesn't think there's gonna be enough for the
Enough
lot.
money, yeah. Chris, go ahead.
Well, when this was first presented to council a couple of years back, it was basically a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
And the idea was to, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the first request was for over $2 million. The council didn't approve of that because there was no backup paperwork or anything that would substantiate the request. The total project originally was for $5 million. So now I think this project is coming down to a price tag of maybe 3 and change at this particular time. Once again, I'm sort of jumping around here because there is history here. I guess the question is putting myself in the mind of what's best for the city and also being on the council and everything else. How do we proceed? What do we go forward with? What is it? I mean, again, we're agonizing over this, but the mayor is going to have the final say.
Right.
The issue, the most important issue to me in this is what the recommendation of this committee makes. It will be in a written report and council will get it.
Yeah.
So that will give council more information as to what's being thought of and that kind of stuff. So I really don't even know what to say. We did 9.6 last year. And that was basically the original request was it was 1,849,900 was the original request. So it was $1,849,900 was the original request to be to do the upgrade. They were going to transfer 56 out of capital stabilization. And then the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, was to borrow the sum of $1,792,90. But the authorization last year was for 900 and 4,000.
I don't know.
Yeah. So I think what is happening here is that the other half of that money, basically, the other half of the 1.85 is being asked for. Now, how do we determine, again, what is the control on all of this so that we know that the money is being used and allocated for the intentions that have been set forward within this budget piece? So that's,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's my biggest concern here is what just appears to be a lack of organization and communication around the priorities, and then a clear, I think, disagreement between what the city council would prioritize perhaps, or the city would prioritize versus what the police department might prioritize. And it's one of the largest sums of money we're being asked to put to a vote. And we probably have the most conflicting or absent information And I do understand the pressure because we can all agree it's a building that needs some love and attention. I guess for what little I know about construction projects on old and well-used buildings, we're going about it in a way that seems like it's just going to spend more money rather than, it doesn't seem like a wise way to invest it, to go kind of without having a whole lot of structure to what is being allocated, how much is being allocated and what it is for. It's just so much money with so little progress made on almost a similar amount last year.
So Amy, would you suggest that they submit individual requests?
I
Like,
don't know. I guess I'm looking for, I I actually tangent a little bit is I was like, I don't think I know enough to be on this committee. We need someone else to do this. And when I sit here and I look at this, I think, gosh, why wouldn't we just spend a bunch to get a really good general contractor that will lead us through several years of investments in infrastructure? But I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know if that even makes sense.
Well, can I speak
Please.
to that a little bit?
And then Chris goes.
So I think, in terms of what these folks have done, clearly what they've done is they've been asked, this contractor
Yeah.
has been asked, said, we need all of this done. We can't do it all at once. So we're going to have to do some type of phased approach.
Yeah.
So the contractor is, I think, in some sense, giving you the quotes to be able to do that phased approach. And even says in the narrative that, it's not going to be your most effective way because you're not getting the deployment bundling that you get when you deploy and just do everything. But if you want to break it out, here's how you do it. And then I think, and I think they're also telling you, these are your highest priorities. Like you should deal with your infrastructure before you start reconfiguring, other places. That's generally, what they would recommend. So I think you're asking the right question. I think there is some of that going on, whether it's been being implemented that way. I'm not sure, but that's what I take from this report.
I just would never prioritize the Sally Port over the locker rooms for female officers. Call me crazy, but if you work for the department, you should have a place to change.
Right.
And keep and store your belongings.
But the contractor would be prioritizing it on effectiveness of the construction.
Yeah.
So the water infrastructure, like you got to address the infrastructure before you start putting new things in, so there might be a way that they've come up with that list, which again, isn't maybe the operational ideal for priorities.
Right.
But it could be for the contractor, the construction piece of it.
Yeah.
I think that's what they're
appreciate
saying.
that. I appreciate that.
But
Yes.
at the same time, this Pacheco Ross plan was a freebie from an architect that was working on the fire station. And this is the one that came up with the $1 million.
it wasn't free.
Okay,
I believe the mayor had paid for it out of her unrestricted. I'd have to double check that, but I know it wasn't free.
well, and to me, it was not, when they came up with $1 million Sally Port and they built a building for the fire station for much less that's even heated, it seems kind of bizarre to me. I mean, I think that this should be approached like the library was, where you have a architect and a project manager who come up with plans for making the building habitable, and then they hire the contractors and all that stuff. I mean, that's the way you approach construction, not this give them money, keep throwing money at the project. This is.
Right. That's how you would do a full-fledged building project. But if you don't have enough to do that from the outset, which clearly these amounts aren't enough, sometimes you do have to, do things in a more piecemeal way. And I think generally you don't get the same effectiveness or efficiency, unfortunately. Like what you're suggesting, I think that's the the ideal way. That's why the building authorities at the state level, require you to do that, because they've determined that that is the most effective way to do things.
Well, this is not passing muster with us. It's not passing muster with the council.
Yeah.
So I think it's time to rethink the approach. I'm sorry, Chris.
Chris, go ahead.
Sorry, Chris.
No, it's perfectly fine. Jean, what I wanted to, mention was, hindsight is wonderful, but at this point, you serve on a committee, Jean, that I think one of the duties that you're charged with is this type of project, so that the committee itself goes around and inspects, analyzes what needs to be done and make recommendations. For whatever reason, this didn't happen, fell through the cracks, whatever that is. Also, the other thing that contributes to the difficult decision-making that we find ourselves in is the fact that there was, going back 5 years or a little bit more, there was a plan in the works for public safety complex, which would have taken care of both the police and the fire department, building needs and everything else. That didn't happen, unfortunately. So I guess I'm going to,
You want to make a motion?
well,
I'm struggling with where we go with this.
I move
Yeah.
we get Chinese food.
Yay,
Here we go.
I'll second that. No, quick.
I'm really struggling to know what to do. I don't want to be irresponsible, but I don't know that we have either the power or the time in our role to be really responsible about this.
And Chris, planning and construction did try to get involved in this. And we did have a meeting with Gordon and made suggestions, and no one ever did anything. They brushed us off. So it's not from lack of trying to tell them that this is how you go about it. They refuse to take the steps to go forward in the way we recommended. So I have a real problem with the way this is being done from the beginning.
Okay, that's fair enough. When I look down at the priorities and everything else, the Sally Port is there. That's the one that sticks out right now.
Right.
To me. And that's basically the amount of money that is being asked for at this point.
Yeah.
The amount of money being asked for and the projects that are being spent on so far are a disconnect. That's another piece that's going on,
Yeah.
at least in my mind. I would
Same.
have a better comfort level if I knew that the water infiltration problem was taken care of.
Right.
That would be my number one piece. I would have a better comfort level with that, knowing that the locker rooms were compliant, those kinds of things. So I guess that leaves us as to what are we going to do? I mean, are we going to recommend this amount of money, which, I mean, if we just remove Sallyport and fund everything else, but doesn't make sense to me to reconfigure a parking lot if you're going to do building construction. So there's a whole piece in here. Jean, you mentioned before that you're looking like it would make you happier if we had a redo on this.
Yes.
What do you mean by redo?
Well, I
mean, I'm inclined to make a motion to just vote no on the full amount at this point. We are only one body. that deals
Right.
with this. And we are, we're, the lowest on the totem pole for sure. But it does send a clear message that might not be heard any other way, that this is the wrong way to go about it.
And I would trust that Diana could talk with the police and say, you're doing this all wrong. Please let us help you on how to go forward.
Well, and I think the point made about planning and construction is a solid one too, that perhaps if we trust the process, isn't that the cliche? Trust the process, work with the resources that are available to you. All right, let's try it. I make a motion to vote for I make a motion to approve 952,000 for police station updates and reconfiguration as presented.
Second.
Second by Member Wall. Further discussion? All right, let's vote. Chris?
No,
Jean?
No.
And I'm also a no. And I thank you all. And I don't think and we will obviously put some context to that. And I don't think we're being irresponsible. I think we are just putting up the flag. We're using what's available to us as a committee to say, hey, somebody look at this besides us. This doesn't seem like the right way to throw the money around.
and Amy, if I may, for just a minute.
Please.
I think that when these minutes and these votes are recorded and everything else, I think the narrative is extremely important to go along with the votes so that everybody understands the rationale. I'm not opposed to getting this building under control and modernizing it and everything else. But I agree in essence that this project needs to be sorted out a bit more. So I just want that narrative piece in those minutes.
Thank you. Yes, for sure.
I would just say, you have a spot here that says history and current status. And even if this is completed, giving you some context of, where, if it's a multi-year project, where it's at, I think that would even be useful.
Would be more helpful, for sure. Thank you. All right, let's talk about the vehicles. So there's a request for, I believe, 3 vehicles.
Yeah.
And it is 2 replacement cruisers and what is the sport utility vehicle? Is that the other one? Am I right?
The marked pickup truck.
The marked pickup truck. Yeah, I need the dollar amount on the marked pickup truck. Yeah. So I heard a few interesting things from Chief Hague when he spoke to us about these cruisers. So the first thing that I heard him say loud and clear was, we're going to be in real trouble if we don't start upgrading our cruisers. We are behind by years and years and years. I don't have the history to know how often cruisers were replaced under Mayor Martin. That would be interesting to know if they were. The second thing.
As the old person on this committee.
Please.
Meaning having been here the longest, right?
Yeah. Seasoned professional on the
Gotcha.
committee.
The police cruisers were on a leased basis, and every year they took the steps to control the ages of the vehicles.
Okay.
Period. We did not buy cruisers.
And do we know what has changed?
Yes, the mayor cut the funding for the leases last year.
Last year. So the leases, were they a capital request or are they in?
It was the budget.
It's in the budget.
It's honestly, the cruisers are more viewed as a supply because they just don't last.
I see.
They really don't last.
Yeah.
Put the miles on them and
So
So-
maybe they're not really appropriate as a capital request at all, or they are because of their amount?
I know the chief's argument on this is that when he's in a lease, his budget is obligated to that amount. So if he has a budget reduction, he can't cut the leases because it's an obligated amount.
Okay.
So he felt that was making it extremely difficult for him with his budget, you know?
Understood,
He'd be cutting people versus vehicles.
understood.
So, but from a practicality standpoint, the reason it was in the budget, it was done via lease, and B, they just don't last.
Yeah.
They don't make it 5 years. At all. So,
Right. The other thing I heard that was interesting is that Chief Hague was also pretty certain that the lot full of SUVs down by Applebee's is going to be developed at some point into a McGovern dealership. If you've been by there, you've seen what I've seen is that there's like an acre of literal SUVs, an acre of them sitting there. And he said they're going to be cruisers for all the towns around here. That's why McGovern has them all, because everybody's going to order cruisers. They're all for the police departments. So I'm just sharing that so we can remember that that's what he told us, because I just thought that was fascinating. I'm not sure what the right word is, maybe bravado? I don't know what the right word is for that.
Fascinating is one.
depends if that dealership goes on the state bid list.
That's true.
I think they do, they're huge.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah, it's the dealership lists that bought Dillon Chevrolet.
And they came from the eastern part of the state.
Yes,
It's quite possible they are on the state contract.
Yes.
So that's sort of a guarantee that they will have a lot of cruiser
Yeah.
orders.
Yeah. And then we also have another vehicle. So there's a request for 3 cruisers, and Jean described it best, the marked sport utility vehicle.
He called it a marked pickup truck.
Marked pickup truck. And I believe the reason that he gave quite clearly was the fire department has one and we do not. That's what I heard. That is what I heard. And he even went so far as to say, well, our cruisers, the SUV cruisers do have, and he wants it to tow around
The sign.
the signs. The cruisers, he said, also have the tow package to tow the signs.
I think we're heading toward no for marked.
I've been bothered by that that justification since I heard it. That for me was
A killer.
that's not a reason to buy something. I mean, maybe if you're the dad on the block that needs all the new toys, that's the reason to buy, but it's not the reason to use city money to buy things. I didn't hear any, I don't recall hearing other justification for the marked pickup truck. Did anyone else hear anything towing the signs with it? And the fire department has one.
And they already have the UTV.
And they have, it could pull the signs, I don't know. Okay, so how do we want to approach voting on these? We've got the concern around lease versus purchase. This appears to be, or would be, the first purchase of police cruisers in some time because they've been on a lease.
And they don't last.
And they don't last. And then we have the pickup truck. How do we want to approach this? Do we want to talk more about, should it be a lease? Does it even belong in a capital discussion? I don't know what the right answer is here.
Well, I am going to ask that it be put back into the police budget. And if he can't justify it to everybody as part of his budget to lease the vehicles, that to me is his problem.
If it's leased, it is in, I'm sorry, I'm a numbskull about this stuff. If it's leased, it doesn't come out of capital.
No,
It comes out of the police budget. And so the issue arose when the budget was cut significantly last year.
no, the mayor cut the lease budget last year.
As
Was
part of
not-
the capital, no, as part of her budget. Okay,
In her budget book last year, she cut the lease from 150,000
Thank
to
you.
50,000.
thank you, okay. And so that created a pinch on what they were able to do with their,
To keep moving them around,
Yeah.
et cetera.
okay. I don't know what to do with this.
Chris has an opinion.
Oh, Chris, please, I'm sorry, go ahead,
I always have an opinion.
please.
Um, So I come from a world where, police cruisers were always part of capital requests, always. Leasing didn't come into my world at all. I look at it. I look at it as an either or. I don't have a problem if we purchase them outright. I really don't have a problem with that at all. And to do so through capital is appropriate in my mind. I don't know if leasing, I guess this question for Liz probably, if leasing itself cannot be a capital item. Or can it?
Well,
Last year for some.
you would have to appropriate an amount that you know would be used for the next, usually the leases are 3 years. Used for the next 3 years, it wouldn't. So I suppose that is a possibility. And then you leave the door open to, or you can allow, well, no, you either borrow or you don't. So you could approve an amount that is either borrow or either capital or buy. You would reduce it sounded to me like you wanted to reduce that one truck,
Yes.
which would reduce that amount to where I have it on the capital approval. Been trying to build up capital, just a little brief history. I didn't have a lot to work with at all when I came on. So the goal was to build up capital and to keep raising the threshold at which we borrow, So in other words, last year I was able to use 100,000. This year I'm trying to use 200,000, And if we keep building capital, we can do that, to where we increase the threshold to where we will consider borrowing, So I would say I would reduce the amount and make a recommendation that it comes from capital to either lease or buy outright, whatever makes the most sense. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Can I ask a question? So for you folks that know the history, what happens to the cruisers after the lease? Are they returned? Are they traded toward the next cruiser?
We
What's
own
the
them.
disposition? You
We
keep
own
them?
them, and they're usually rotated. So it
Okay.
goes to a detective or it goes to.
Okay. So at the end of the lease, you're buying out or you're keeping the vehicle
Yes.
after. Okay. I'm just
Yes.
trying. That's
And it
sometimes
could- I'm
an
not saying it
indicator of
couldn't
whether you
be
want to lease or
traded.
not.
And it could be traded in. There's a lot of
Yeah.
Yeah.
possibilities. But I think from talking to the chief, it's usually that it gets rotated down to a detective or whomever.
Okay.
So sometimes it can be a cost analysis. I mean, there are, there's fees for borrowing and then there's fees for leasing. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
generally
and
leases,
that's why we've gone with leases, because it makes sense to do a one-time payment annual, and then you cut down on the interest when you're making the annual payment up front.
Mhm.
So that's what we normally do with leases. It makes no sense to do any kind of a monthly lease. That's nuts. And it ends up costing more. But to do an annual payment, the lease generally is a good deal versus borrowing.
Mhm. Anyone want to make a motion? Anyone?
I could make a motion, I think.
Okay.
Hang on. I just need to look at figures for a second. Okay, so I would like to make a motion that we reduce the requested amount by the price of the Ford pickup.
Mm.
The is it the F-15?
150, I think. Yeah.
And so that amount is 45,500.
Okay.
Okay, so we'd have to reduce the amount by that amount, 45,
I'm doing it now.
502.90.
that's all the stuff.
Wait a
So-
minute, it's 62,179, because turn the page.
Sorry.
All the equipment.
Oh, that goes on with it.
So what's the
Yes,
total
thank
amount?
you. 62,179.70. Right. Okay. So I'll make a motion that we reduce the requested amount by 62,000.
180. 248.
62,179.70.
So it would, the new
That
total
would be-
amount would be 186,238.
Okay, that would be my first motion.
Okay, so the motion on the table, do we have a second? I would second that. So it's to reduce the total amount of borrowing requested from 248,418 to 186,238, if my math is right.
Yeah, I did it too.
Okay. And that's the motion. It was made by Chris, seconded by me. Further discussion of that?
So Liz, if we feel strongly about leasing, we would vote against this because it should go into the budget? I mean, tell me because I feel strongly about the leasing. How do I?
Then oh gosh.
Because
Actually, what we're just doing, Jean, is we're just reducing the amount to remove the Ford truck.
I know, but I'm just, okay, so you're right, that's the first vote, okay. But then
That's
Liz,
the
you
first
keep,
motion.
working on my
I
question.
know, I'm thinking about it.
So that's the motion right now. That's the first motion.
Okay.
Any further discussion of that one? I'm not hearing any. So Chris, how do you vote?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Okay. It sounds like from what I'm hearing that we're not done talking about police vehicles though.
No.
That's true. So then I guess the question comes down to lease versus buy.
Well, I think
Which
it's more than that. I think that Jean wants it in the operating budget, from what I'm hearing. Whether it's lease or by.
Got it. Got
Seems to me but Jean
Yes.
voted for that. So Jean, I think you would personally vote that down then, period.
Yes, okay.
Um,
Then that settles it. They can do whatever they want to. I vote no.
Wait a minute, what are we voting no on? Wait.
No, there's no motion on the table. We're just talking, unless someone's making another motion, but I feel like we can leave it as what we've done, but
And not approve it.
we,
We have reduced the amount, but we have not voted to.
thank you. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Right.
Do we want, okay, so a motion to approve the new total from capital for police vehicles, 186, 238. Do I have a
Okay,
motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, so you're gonna make the motion?
No, or,
I'll second it,
okay, I'll make the motion.
okay? And further discussion of that. Chris?
Okay, I'm confused, so please help me. We already voted to reduce the budget, so the request to 196. So I'm not sure we should vote that amount again because it's already been voted on. What I think you're looking to vote on is a recommendation that this be either lease or capital. Let me just say, wait a minute, that's not.
No,
I
that's,
No,
Okay, go ahead.
operating or capital, I think?
Correct.
Operating or capital.
so if I vote no for this, I am voting that it be operating, not capital.
Okay,
Right now, you have a motion and a second on the floor, Amy.
What's
You know
that?
that. You have a motion and a second on the floor right now. You know
Yes,
that, right?
yes. And further discussion? All right, so we're gonna vote on the motion to approve the 186, 238. Jean,
No,
Chris?
no,
Yeah, it doesn't matter what I vote. I think, I don't even know the answer, so I'm gonna vote no. Cause I just don't know what the right answer is and I want, yeah, we'll just go with the group on this. So that
So,
is,
so it's not, it's no to the,
that's capital spending.
it's no to the borrowing then.
yes, I am totally for him having vehicles.
Right, but you wanted through lease.
Yes.
Okay,
The operating.
And in the
And this
general,
ultimately ended up here because of what the mayor did last year, right? That she cut. Right, okay.
so the recommendation is to fund it through the operating budget.
Yes, and I've made a note of that.
Okay,
Okay, we are on to Public Works. I just want to do a time check. It is 11:13. I really need to be done with the meeting by noon today, so we'll do as much as we can, and if we need to schedule another time, we will do that.
Okay.
All right,
sounds great.
Okay.
Since Public Works is really long,
yeah,
if anyone, you might be wise to just take something out and if you don't approve of it and then just say as presented. I mean, still read them all, but.
yep. No, that's a helpful suggestion. Thank you. So we've got a few things here, a total of 1.89 million in requests for FY24. There is, let's see. Chapter 90 funds, sidewalk replacement program, highway fund, Mill Street bridge repairs, replace the Toro large area mower, the parking lot milling and paving on Legion Ave, and replace truck number 28, and replace road treatment truck number 138. Any discussion on any of those? Not hearing any discussion. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I move that we accept the things as the funds as presented.
A motion on the table to accept the funds for FY '24 as presented.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
And that's a second from Chris. And further discussion? Not hearing any, let's make a vote. Jean?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. And that was unanimous. And thank you, Liz, for the suggestion on the consent agenda like that. All right. And we're on to the two requests from central maintenance for FY '24. The roof on the old library and, oh, I was wondering where this request went. I knew there was something we talked about the roof over the back stairs at the police department. So this is in the central maintenance request for 30,000. So it's a total of 190,000 in borrowing or in capital requests from central maintenance. Discussion on either of these?
I'm going to vote no on both of them.
Okay. Chris, anything from you?
Yeah. Sorry. I will be voting yes on the stairs at the police department. The roof, that's kind of a difficult. I do believe in roof repair. I think it's very, very important. At this point, I'm questioning whether or not the town should own this building. I know we put it on the market to see if we had any buyers, but nobody wanted it at its assessed value. However, not for nothing, I'm going to be a little bit of a churl, but we just went through a whole great big thing in the city of Greenfield with tax taking and selling property for whatever its market value was and keeping the proceeds. And I'm of the mind that as much as I really love this old building, it should be sold, even if we have to auction it. It should be put on the tax rolls. And I don't see the value at this time of fixing this. Plus, this is not the roof on the slated roof on the original building. This is the roof that goes out on the back. So it's the stacks at this point. So I'm going to vote no on the 160. I'm going to vote yes on the 30,000.
Okay.
That's where I'm headed.
Thank you. So it sounds like we should take these separately. So a motion to spend 160,000 in capital in FY '24 to replace the old library roof.
So moved.
And I will second that.
Okay.
And do we have further discussion about the library roof? Not hearing any. Okay, so Jean, how do you vote?
No.
And Chris?
No.
And I am also a no, and that is unanimous. And Chris, I think you summarized all of it for at least my opinion on it very well, so thank you. And how about a motion to, gosh, I'm so confused why this isn't in the police department.
Well, I think central maintenance is just gonna do it all.
They're just gonna do this.
Cause like the materials, yeah.
I
I think that's why they felt, I know, it could go either way.
Is this related to the water incursion? Does anyone know?
I think it says that it's snow is the problem.
Snow and ice? I feel like that's what I remember too. Oh, is there a?
I'm thinking it's in here somewhere. And my opposition to it is that I live somewhere that there is a roof over the stairs and the snow blows onto the stairs and creates the same problem. So I don't see that the roof solves the problem. That's my opposition.
Yeah, heavy salt use, don't get much sun. Okay.
I think it's I think it's an urgent safety piece. That's why I think it's in central maintenance.
Yeah,
And if I thought that would solve it, I would vote yes for it, but I don't think it does. It's again a problem that needs more.
and there's a quote from Penfield and Sons. So that's what's giving us the total price. Is there a thought maybe if central maintenance does it, it would cost less?
Well, they don't do that.
There's just George, and he's retiring,
So
so
that's, okay,
so I don't think central maintenance is going to do it.
okay, it's just, that's right, it's George, retiring George. That's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. Okay, so a motion to approve the capital expenditure of 30,000 for the roof over the backstairs of the police department.
I will make that motion. So moved.
From Chris, and a second. I'll go ahead and second it just so we can have a vote. Further discussion on this? Hello.
Hello, that's me. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. All right, I don't know how I want to vote on this. I think I am inclined to vote no, but I also see the pictures and think, yes, it is a safety issue.
I'm totally agree, but I think it needs more,
It feels like installing a wall where I don't know. I don't want to get into what I think. Okay, so. Okay, let's go to a vote. Chris, how do you vote on this? The 30,000 for the backstairs? You're a yes. Jean,
no.
you're a no. All right, no one's gonna look at our stuff anyway, so I'm gonna vote yes on this. And so the motion passes 2-1. And we'll just leave it at that and have that move on and see what happens if it comes back to us next year. Right? And there's nothing else from central maintenance. All right, so we are now moving into the rec department. And they have 4 projects and a total of 605,000 in cost for the 4. Green River erosion control at 40,000. The Rocky Mountain and Highland Ridge Trail upgrades for 185. The bocce courts for 80 and the pickleball courts for 300. Any discussion on any of these?
Yes.
Please, Chris, go ahead.
Okay. I think these are all very worthy. I was really happy with Christie's presentation with this. I know that there is a CP, I think it's a CPA application out on some of this as well. The only piece of this project that I will not be voting for are the bocce courts.
The only piece you would not vote for is bocce courts. Is that what you said?
And I'm saying the same thing.
And you are saying exactly the same thing.
Yes, so you want to take the bocce courts out and we'll vote on that separately?
Sure, because I'm so curious about this. Okay, so how about a motion to approve the Green River erosion control request, the Rocky Mountain Highland Ridge Trail upgrade request, and the pickleball court request?
So move.
Second.
Okay, and further discussion. I will be abstaining from this vote because I have a vested interest in the pickleball courts, just so we're aware. And if that changes how you want to do your motion, we can, I don't think it's really that big of a deal. So, okay. Further discussion on these. Okay, so Chris, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Jean, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, so that's, and I'm going to abstain from voting, and that is, that passes. I'm just making the right notes here. And let's take up the bocce courts at Beacon. It says Beacon Hill, but I know it should be Beacon Field, right?
Yeah.
It's at Beacon Hill.
Yep.
I don't know, okay. Discussion on this request. No discussion.
I also think that this is the community preservation piece. Funding has been requested on this as well. But
Are you sure they did a CPA request? I'm not certain they did, but
I
maybe
don't
they did.
know. I have, in my notes, I have CPC. So
Yeah.
Capital Planning Committee
Yep,
funding requested. That's what I have in my notes, but
She did say that all of them have had requests.
okay. Okay. I just think that, my opinion on this, I wasn't in favor of it at the first round. I didn't think it was, something I could support, and I did not support it on council floor, so I won't be supporting it in this committee.
okay. Jean, anything from you?
Nope, that works.
Okay. So a motion to approve $80,000 for bocce courts at Beacon Field.
So move.
And I'll second that. Okay, and further discussion? I don't think we need it. That was pretty clear cut. Okay. Jean, how do you vote?
No.
And Chris?
No.
And I'm a yes, but I'm so curious as to the context of this. So that does not pass. And I'm just making my notes on the vote. Okay, so that is the Recreation Department. We tackled those few pretty quickly, and we're on to the schools. And there's one capital request from the schools for FY24 for $105,668 for the energy recovery units. It says GPS. These are actually located on the middle school roof. And the context, I'm not sure what Christine supplied, but I can tell you the context is we were informed over the summer that these, I believe there's 3 units, have a lifespan that is nearing its end, and we would be wise to replace them before they break. And
Can I mention too that the amount
please,
on the detail, it actually is that what came up in the discussion is actually 195. So.
oh, it's a typo. Okay.
Well, on the original form request, but when you look at the detail quotes, it's 195. So we did correct that. We talked about this when
I
Christine.
got it. 195,688 needed from capital. So it's
Just so
spelled out
people
here.
know the amount.
And the further context for all of our audience at home is that the school department did receive from a state grant $294,932 as well as $40,000 for an engineering study. That grant was applied for and the money successfully received. Thank you, Joe Comerford, for sending that to us. And so the remaining amount is the 195. Did I get the amount? Yeah, 195,68. Can I get Yeah, go
Yes,
ahead.
I make a motion. I make a motion that we accept this as presented, the 195, lost my place
68.
again. 68.
Second,
And a second from Jean. Further discussion? Okay, I'm hearing none. Jean, how do you vote?
yes.
And Chris?
Yes,
And I'm also a yes, and that passes unanimously. Thank you. Veterans. They have a vehicle that they want to replace, and this is a capital request actually for fiscal year 26.
So we don't have to.
We don't have to do anything, sorry. Okay.
Just came to the-
no, it's been moved up. The
Oh, it has?
request was moved up,
Oh, move to FY 24?
correct.
Okay. Let me just I'm just looking over the materials.
Is that what he said in his meeting, or Chris?
I'm sorry.
Is that what Chris said in his meeting? Because I talked to him and said he confirmed it was for 32 or 26, I mean.
Oh, I don't know. I
I don't
thought it
see-
was,
I don't see anything updated to indicate that it was a request for FY 24.
Yeah,
Everything says wait.
25.
Oh, it was moved up, but moved up to FY 25,
okay.
not 24,
I
from
mean,
26 to
right now,
25.
wait
Yep.
a minute, wait a minute.
Yeah,
Okay, so this request is in our capital book for 2024. So, and he did appear in front of the committee,
he did. Yes.
this group, and asked for it, and they said they were going to kick it up another year. That's what I got out of it. The amount, however, that was requested was 32,000.
Yes. The amount is consistent.
But it's not until next year.
Yeah, what's inconsistent is that on the summary, the 5-year capital plan, it's listed in FY 26. And in the justification provided by Chris Demers, it is FY 25.
Okay, well, hang on just a second here. I understand where. Then my question is, why was he at this meeting?
I think
to
because he's
present it.
new and he just wanted to talk to you all. He's new as the head of veterans.
I mean, look how fun we are, Chris. You just want to talk to us.
Hearing is what?
Heard you were a happening crowd and he wanted to come meet y'all.
So I don't, right? So I don't think we actually need to take a vote on this one. Jean, you agree? Chris, are you okay with not taking a vote on it?
Okay, yep,
Okay,
that's fine. I'm just not sure why it was in our paperwork, but that's okay, no problem.
okay. And we are going now into the enterprise funds requests. The first is GSET's request. This in total is $215,000 over 3 fiscal years, with a request for 85,000 in FY 24. And this is funding for equipment related to the build out beyond kind of the core area of downtown and surrounding downtown to expand GSET. And I believe we talked with John about that it's both wired and wireless technology, which is different than the stuff that is close to downtown, that is more compactly settled because they need different technology when the houses are further away. Let me just find my stuff.
It's at the very back.
Yes. The glasses thing is so tiring.
Just wait, it gets
Yeah,
better.
just wait,
Well,
right,
my
so you need
current-
more.
Not to go off on another tangent, but my current slice of heaven is I have developed an allergy to my brand new, not reading glasses, but my distance glasses, They are peeling away the skin behind my ears, so it hurts even to put these on. Yeah, well, $500 down the drain. Well, not true. I've got a couple of things I'm trying out. Okay, so 85,000.
So I'm wondering why we're paying his annual service contract of 14,000.
Yeah,
Is
that's the
it-
question.
The annual service contract should be in operating. Yes. I even saw Diana, I think, slightly nod her head, so. And that would, if we reduced it by that amount,
It's back to
71,000. Do you want to make a motion, or do we have any further discussion of this?
And I don't,
And this would be borrowing, not a capital
and
expense.
Liz, why are we still paying for this when he got all that money from ARPA? I mean, why?
It's a hard one for me because it doesn't meet my borrowing threshold, but he's also an enterprise, so I don't want to use the capital stabilization, so.
Right,
He does have some retained earnings, but not quite that much. So I don't know, I kind of am with Jean on this.
yeah, not paying, in terms of not something we should be putting into capital borrowing.
Right.
Okay.
I didn't have
And
a
I saw Chris nodding her head, so
Yep, I agree.
I make a motion to approve 85,000 for GSET for their distribution layer equipment.
And I'll second it.
And a second from Jean. Further discussion? I'm not seeing any. Okay, Chris, how do you vote?
Well, wait, can I go back to further
Please.
discussion?
Yes, please.
What was the amount you're making the motion on? 85,000?
The full 85,000.
What's happening to the 14,000 in service contract?
I don't think we're gonna vote to approve any of it. That's why we made the motion that way. Based on what Liz said about it doesn't meet really her thresholds for borrowing.
Okay.
And if you reduce it by the 14, you get to 71, and that certainly wouldn't meet the threshold if 85 doesn't. That was my quick thinking in my head.
And my thinking, you can tell where my thinking is.
For a non-mathematician, you did good.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yep. So the motion is 85,000. I vote no.
Okay, and Jean?
No,
I also vote no, and that is unanimous. Okay, and we're on to the two requests from the sewer fund. Inflow and infiltration repairs for 300,000. Replace dump truck number 37 for 230,000.
I make a motion that we accept those numbers as presented.
Okay,
I second.
and a second from Chris. And my only discussion is RE, I'm assuming is retained earnings.
Yeah,
Correct.
And
Okay.
RP-B, the red thing at the bottom, do I need to pay attention to that dewatering
Well,
project?
we need to talk about it simply because, this is an article that was just, or a order that was just submitted to council because, bond council had rejected a repurposing. So because it's gonna be a new borrowing, even though we're rescinding the old and then we're gonna do a new, it will have to have capital committees vote on it.
Okay, so we'll talk about that separately.
Okay,
Okay. So we have a motion on the table for the 530,000 in total for the two items requested from sewer fund. Any further discussion? Okay, I'm not hearing any. Jean, how do you vote?
yes,
And Chris, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I am also a yes, so that passes unanimously. Okay, and should we talk about the dewatering right now since it's there?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
So basically, council had already approved repurposing this amount for the dewatering. However, bond council rejected it, saying you really just need, because it hadn't been officially borrowed yet, you really just need to rescind the digester and do a separate order for dewatering, but they offset each other. Basically, we're rescinding the same amount and we're authorizing the same amount. But it's
okay.
how bond council wanted to see it.
It makes sense if you know municipal financing.
Yeah.
All right, so do you want us to do a motion right
Yes,
now on this? Okay, so a motion to approve the repurposing of borrowing, is that the right term? For,
Just to to rescind the digester and to authorize.
oh, I see, it's right there. Okay, so a
Yeah.
motion to approve rescinding the digester and authorize the dewatering in the amount of $3,585,000.
So moved.
That is from Chris, and a second, I'll make the second. And any further discussion? It's just pretty standard swapping business. Okay, Chris, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Jean, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I also vote yes, so that's unanimous. Okay, and do we have to do the same thing with the water mains that's in red there?
Yes, because it explains some of that water main is coming from retained earnings, but the rest is coming from this repurposing amount.
Okay, so a similar motion, a motion to replace Newell Pond Road and Nash Mill water mains in the amount of $727,484.
So move.
That was Jean, and I will second it. Do we want to discuss further? No. Chris, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Jean?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes, so that passes unanimously. And Diana or Liz, you'll do whatever needs to happen about bond council and that we just voted on those two? Yes.
Correct. So
You
that's
know what to
in,
do.
that goes along with like a memo of what happened in the actual vote.
Okay, yes, you've explained that
Okay.
related to the borrowing for the
Right,
fire station.
correct.
It's similar, right? Yeah.
Correct.
See, sometimes I can remember how things work. All right, and so if I am seeing everything correctly, it looks like we have completed our,
We have to do the 445,000
what did I miss?
The water funds
for the water fund.
to actually vote the.
Oh, I'm sorry, from the water fund, I'm sorry. So I got hung up on the bright red. So we have, from the water fund, we have two requests for a total of 445,000. Water main replacement and Millbrook Well number 2 rehabilitation.
So move.
You want to do a motion to approve both right now?
Yeah.
That's a motion to approve the 445 for both of those projects together. I would second that. And do we have discussion? I'm not hearing any discussion. Chris, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Jean?
Yes.
And I am also a yes, and that is unanimous. And now am I correct that we have completed our deliberation and discussion?
You have.
All right, so
Before
I would-
noon.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And that was from Chris, and I will second that. And we do have to do a roll call vote because we're hybrid. Chris, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Jean?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. We're adjourned at 11:44 a.m. Thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording.